At 85, Al Pacino stands as one of Hollywood's most legendary icons, the face of The Godfather, Scarface, and Scent of a Woman. But behind the Oscars, the standing ovations, and the unforgettable lines, lies a story the public rarely hears. A story not of triumph, but of betrayal. From the woman who once held his heart and walked away without looking back, to the director who pushed him to his breaking point, to the studio executives who used him like a pawn in their billion-dollar games, Pacino's life has been haunted by betrayal at every turn. Even his closest friendships, the ones forged in the fires of Hollywood's golden era, weren't immune. And in love, his greatest weakness, the betrayals cut deepest, leaving scars that fame and fortune could never heal. This is not the story Hollywood wants you to hear. This is the untold truth of Al Pacino's 6 greatest betrayals: the heartbreak, the broken friendships, and the ruthless system that tried to control him. Tonight, we strip away the spotlight to reveal the pain behind the legend. Long before he became Michael Corleone or Tony Montana, Alfredo James Pacino was just a poor kid from East Harlem, New York. Born in 1940 to Italian-American parents who divorced when he was only 2, Pacino was raised by his mother and grandparents in a cramped Bronx apartment. Life was tough, money was scarce, and the streets were unforgiving. But amid the chaos, young Pacino found escape in the theater. He wasn't the golden boy Hollywood was looking for. With his sharp nose, intense eyes, and raspy voice, casting agents often told him he didn't have the looks to be a leading man. He failed countless auditions, worked odd jobs as a janitor, busboy, and even a messenger just to survive. But Pacino had something stronger than good looks. He had fire. At the prestigious Actors Studio under the mentorship of Lee Strasberg, he mastered the art of method acting, a style that demanded raw truth and total immersion. His breakthrough came in 1972, when Francis Ford Coppola took a gamble and cast the then unknown actor as Michael Corleone in The Godfather. At first, studio executives wanted him gone, calling him too short and too weak for the role. But Pacino proved them wrong. His quiet menace, his simmering intensity, transformed Michael into one of the most iconic characters in film history. From there, the rise was meteoric. Serpico, Dog Day Afternoon, Scarface, Heat. With each role, Pacino cemented himself not just as a star, but as a force of nature, a man whose craft elevated every film he touched. By the time he won his long-awaited Oscar for Scent of a Woman in 1993, Pacino wasn't just an actor. He was Hollywood royalty. Yet, as his fame soared, so did the shadows around him. The same industry that crowned him king was also setting the stage for betrayal after betrayal. Betrayal Hasson, Diane Keaton. On screen, they were perfect. Michael and Kay, 2 lovers trapped in the violent, suffocating world of The Godfather. Off-screen, Al Pacino and Diane Keaton shared a chemistry that was just as undeniable. During the 1,970 seconds, their romance blossomed quietly behind the cameras. For Pacino, who was still navigating the pressures of sudden fame, Keaton became both confidant and lover. She admired his talent, teased him out of his brooding moods, and gave him a sense of stability he rarely found. But Hollywood romances are rarely built to last. Pacino, consumed by his career and restless by nature, struggled to give Keaton the commitment she longed for. While she was open about wanting marriage and family, he avoided the subject, burying himself in work. After years of waiting, Keaton finally walked away, choosing her own happiness over a man who couldn't give her what she wanted. The betrayal wasn't loud or scandalous, it was quiet, almost invisible. But to Pacino, it cut deep. He had lost the one woman who truly understood him, not because she left for another man, but because he failed to hold on. Years later, Keaton would confess that Pacino was the great love of her life. Yet even in those words lingered an ache. Love wasn't enough to overcome his fear of commitment. Their relationship never fully recovered. They remained friends, worked together again, and even joked about their failed romance. But beneath the laughter was a scar. For Pacino, Diane Keaton was the first person who showed him how fragile love could be and how easily it could slip away. It was a betrayal born not of malice, but of absence. and in many ways, it set the tone for the heartbreaks that would follow him for decades to come. Betrayal #2. Francis Ford Coppola. When Al Pacino landed the role of Michael Corleone, he owed much of it to Francis Ford Coppola. The young director saw something in Pacino that no one else in Hollywood could see: a quiet danger, a depth that went beyond appearances. But their relationship was never simple. On the set of The Godfather, Coppola fought tooth and nail to keep Pacino in the role. Studio executives wanted him gone, calling him a nobody with no star power. Coppola's loyalty should have cemented a bond for life. Yet as the films went on, that loyalty became tangled with conflict. Coppola was demanding, relentless, and often merciless in his pursuit of perfection. Pacino, known for his intense method style, clashed with Coppola's obsession with control. During The Godfather Part 2, tensions reached their peak. Coppola pushed Pacino through grueling takes, questioning his instincts, even threatening to cut scenes that Pacino fought to keep. The actor later admitted that working with Coppola could feel like betrayal, being stripped down, doubted, and left to prove himself again and again, even after delivering the performance of a lifetime. Their fallout wasn't public, but it was real. After Part 3, Pacino distanced himself, privately voicing frustration that Coppola never fully trusted him despite decades of collaboration. To Pacino, the man who once believed in him had become another figure of betrayal, demanding loyalty but offering little in return. Still, their names will forever be tied together. Without Coppola, Pacino might never have been Michael Corleone. And without Pacino, Coppola might never have made cinema history. But behind the legacy lies a fractured partnership, two geniuses bound by art, but separated by ego and disappointment. Betrayal #3. Beverly D'Angelo. In the late 1990 seconds, after years of fleeting romances, Al Pacino found something that looked like stability with actress Beverly D'Angelo. The two quickly became one of Hollywood's most unlikely yet intriguing couples. In 2001, at the age of 60, Pacino became a father for the first time when Beverly gave birth to their twins, Anton and Olivia. For a man who had long avoided family life, it seemed like Pacino was finally ready to settle down. But behind the facade of domestic bliss, cracks were already forming. Pacino's perfectionism and unpredictable moods clashed with Beverly's free-spirited personality. While she wanted a partner invested in family, Pacino's focus never strayed far from his career and his own solitude. Their relationship turned turbulent, swinging between moments of tenderness and bitter arguments. By 2003, the love story collapsed into a very public custody battle. Beverly accused Pacino of being controlling and emotionally distant, while Pacino fought fiercely for equal custody of his children. The headlines painted him not as the legendary actor but as a flawed man battling over his own family. For Pacino, the betrayal wasn't just Beverly walking away, it was the courtroom, the lawyers, and the way private pain became public spectacle. Though they eventually reached a truce for the sake of their twins, the damage was done. Beverly D'Angelo, once the woman who had given him the gift of fatherhood, had become another reminder of how love in Pacino's life always seemed to curdle into conflict. To this day, Pacino remains close to his children, but his relationship with Beverly is marked by a bitterness neither time nor fame could erase. For a man who had waited so long to embrace fatherhood, the betrayal of family life slipping away was one of the deepest wounds he carried. Betrayal #4. Robert De Niro. For decades, Al Pacino and Robert De Niro were considered two sides of the same coin, the titans of method acting, the faces of gritty New York cinema, the men who defined an era. Their careers seemed to run in parallel. Mean Streets for De Niro, Serpico for Pacino, Raging Bull and Scarface. By the time they finally shared the screen in Michael Mann's Heat in 1995, fans believed their friendship was unshakable, a brotherhood forged by art itself. But beneath the admiration lay a quiet rivalry. Both men vied for the same roles, the same directors, and the same crown of the greatest actor of their generation. De Niro would land parts Pacino wanted, and Pacino would sometimes refuse to even acknowledge the comparisons. The tension was rarely spoken aloud, but in Hollywood circles, it was well known. De Niro and Pacino were not always the inseparable comrades fans imagined. The betrayal came when business entered the picture. Stories circulated of producers choosing De Niro over Pacino for key films, sometimes allegedly after De Niro had pushed behind the scenes. Pacino, who prided himself on loyalty, felt stung. To lose a role to a stranger was one thing, but to lose it to a friend was something else entirely. Even Heat, their great collaboration, revealed cracks. They filmed only one scene truly together, and insiders whispered it was deliberate, a way to keep their egos from colliding. Later, during The Irishman with Martin Scorsese, the two finally reunited, older and more fragile. But the camaraderie on screen couldn't erase years of silent competition and disappointment. Pacino has never spoken harshly of De Niro in public, yet those who know him say the rivalry left scars. The betrayal wasn't in one single act. It was in the realization that his greatest friend was also his greatest rival, and that in Hollywood, loyalty often comes second to legacy. Betrayal #5. Hollywood Studios. If love and friendship brought Al Pacino pain, the machine of Hollywood delivered betrayals on a much larger scale. For all his accolades, Pacino was never immune to the ruthless calculations of studio executives who valued profit over artistry and control over loyalty. From the beginning, Pacino's career was a battle against the suits. During The Godfather, Paramount executives wanted him fired before the film even finished shooting, calling him too soft, too short, too forgettable. Coppola had to fight to keep him, but the message was clear. To the studios, Pacino was expendable. The betrayals only deepened as his fame grew. In the 1,980 seconds, Pacino endured one of the lowest points of his career, with box office flops like Revolution. Studio bosses, once eager to exploit his star power, abandoned him when the numbers disappointed. Suddenly, the same man who had carried some of cinema's greatest films found himself blacklisted from major projects, his career teetering on the edge. Contracts became traps. Executives pushed him into roles he didn't want, then blamed him when the films failed. Projects he was passionate about were shelved or sabotaged. At times, Pacino felt less like an artist and more like a pawn in a rigged game. For Pacino, the betrayal wasn't just personal, it was systemic. Hollywood had used him to build its empire, then turned its back the moment he showed weakness. The Oscars and the fame could never erase the sting of knowing that in the end, the studios valued the bottom line far more than the man who had helped redefine cinema. This was betrayal not by a single person, but by the very industry he had given his life to. And it was a betrayal that would shadow him long after the applause faded. Betrayal #6. Lucila Solá. By the time Al Pacino entered his 70s, he had lived through decades of heartbreak, rivalries, and battles with Hollywood itself. But nothing prepared him for the betrayal that would come wrapped not in boardroom deals or failed friendships, but in love, his most vulnerable weakness. In 2009, Pacino began a relationship with Argentine actress Lucila Solá, nearly 40 years his junior. To outsiders, it seemed absurd. One of Hollywood's most revered legends, entangled with a woman young enough to be his daughter. Yet for Pacino, who had long resisted traditional family life, Lucila represented something intoxicating. She was youthful, glamorous, and attentive, bringing energy into the life of a man who had spent decades haunted by solitude. But whispers soon followed. Friends and tabloids alike questioned her intentions. Was it love, or was it the allure of Pacino's fame, wealth, and legacy? Their relationship became fodder for gossip columns, painting Pacino as a fool blinded by desire. For a man who had built his career on strength and dignity, the implication that he was being used cut deeper than any professional slight. The final betrayal came not in a scandalous tabloid headline, but in the slow erosion of trust. Their romance unraveled under the weight of public scrutiny, jealousy, and Pacino's own insecurities about aging. By 2018, the relationship collapsed. Lucila moved on, leaving Pacino to face not just another broken heart, but the cruel reminder that time was no longer on his side. For Pacino, the betrayal was layered. It wasn't just Lucila's departure, it was the way the world saw him during those years. The image of a legendary actor reduced to a tabloid punchline, mocked for chasing youth, stripped him of the dignity he had spent a lifetime earning. Hollywood had betrayed him. Lovers had betrayed him. Friends had betrayed him, but this final wound felt the most personal. At 85, Pacino remains revered, his name etched forever in cinematic history. Yet behind the applause, the betrayal of Lucila Solá lingers as a cruel coda, proof that even legends are not immune to love's most devastating illusions. Al Pacino's story is one of brilliance shadowed by betrayal. From Diane Keaton's quiet departure to Coppola's relentless doubt, from Beverly D'Angelo's custody battles to the rivalry with Robert De Niro, from Hollywood studios discarding him like a broken pawn to Lucila Solá's bittersweet love, each betrayal carved a scar that fame could never hide. Yet, if there is one truth about Pacino, it is resilience. At 85, he remains a towering presence, still commanding stages, still lending his voice to characters that demand depth only he can provide. The betrayals did not break him, they shaped him. They gave his performances the rawness, the edge, the vulnerability that made Michael Corleone's silence chilling, Tony Montana's rage unforgettable, and Frank Slade's cry of, "Hoo-ah!" triumphant. But behind the legend, there is a man who has paid a heavy price. A man who learned that loyalty in Hollywood is fragile, that love can be fleeting, and that even the greatest friendships can be poisoned by ambition. For Pacino, betrayal was not an exception, it was the rhythm of his life. And yet, in spite of it all, he stands, weathered, scarred, but unbroken. The applause may fade, the betrayals may linger, but the name Al Pacino will endure forever. Al Pacino's journey is a reminder that even legends bleed and even icons are betrayed. His story forces us to ask, how much pain hides behind the spotlight, and how much betrayal can one man endure before it defines him? If this untold truth of Al Pacino's life moved you, don't let the story end here. Share your thoughts in the comments. Was there one betrayal that shocked you the most? And which part of Pacino's legacy do you believe will outlive the betrayals? For more hidden stories of Hollywood's brightest stars, subscribe to Faded Crowns and turn on notifications, so you'll never miss the scandals, the heartbreaks, and the legacies that shaped an era. Because here, the crown may shine, but the scars underneath tell the real story.